Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Wolverine Live here on the Wolverine YouTube channel. It is Monday, August 5th, 2024. After, Clayton, just another quiet weekend around these parts. Nothing really to discuss, nothing really to talk about. Anthony Broom here with Clayton Safety. Chris Ballas set to join us here in a little bit, getting a technical difficulty sorted out. But we have a lot to get to tonight. Michigan's about, at this point, 5 days into fall camp without a ton of takeaways yet, but maybe we'll talk about the tone that's been set. Clayton, talked to a few players on Sunday. We'll talk some of the takeaways from those press conferences. We'll obviously talk Michigan versus NCAA, as that is another story that is continued into the college football zeitgeist. Just seems like the machine is revving right back up. So, Clayton, how's it going, man?
I'm doing well, better than ever. Football is closer to being back, so I am very, very excited.
So we are we're in August now. So it is, math is hard, 26 days away from kickoff. Sounds right. We are Rayshon Benny days away from the start of the 2024 season.
Right.
So before we get into the meat and potatoes of our show tonight, we will talk to you about our presenting sponsor, our friends over at Home Field Apparel. They are launching their Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign. It's a month-long campaign delivering everything needed for football season. Some of the key features include the football boxes, coaches' jackets, bomber jackets, Champs Week. They're adding 5 new schools to the Home Field roster. The football boxes in general are something that is new to the Home Field brand. They're gearing up for the 2024 season. From the marching band's first pregame show to the final play of the championship, the football boxes contain 3 never-before-seen items for your school that are not available anywhere else. They're curated specifically so fans have new gear to wear all season long. If you're a Michigan fan that has season tickets or you're going to be at most of the games, you get one of these football boxes from Home Field, you're going to have a new fit for just about every single game. So head on over to homefieldapparel.com. I will get you a promo code when I scroll to the rest of the ad read. Use promo code Wolverine for 15% off your first order at Home Field. That is promo code Wolverine for 15% off your first order. Have some amazing stuff over there. Again, I've said it for years. If you've followed me at the other site, if you've followed us here, I have an entire drawer full of this stuff. It's literally pouring out of my closets. It's pouring out of moving boxes as I kind of reshuffle and restructure some things going on at home. So check out homefieldapparel.com. We are also brought to you by what Clayton Safety terms the best deal in America. That promo code UM1, which gets you 2 months of premium access to the Wolverine for only $1. That's promo code UM1, and the link to that is in the description below. So like we said, we will talk fall camp. We will also take your questions at the end of the show, but we'll start with NCAA versus Michigan and the latest chapter in that saga, which was both illuminating and also really nothing has changed. A draft notice of allegations was leaked, shocking to ESPN's Pete Thamel. I believe there was another reporter attached to that as well. The name escapes me at the moment, but basically looking at what Michigan is actually accused of. And a lot of it, just to sum it up, is there is no smoking gun in terms of tangibly proving there was knowledge of anyone other than Connor Stalions having a hand in the alleged sign stealing scheme. A lot of what Michigan's getting hit on to me, reads as the breaking the spirit, quote unquote, of the rule, and maybe the insubordination in terms of, they're not cooperating. So what does any of that mean? And right on cue, we have our guy here to tell us what all of that means. Chris, we opened the show by just kind of leading into what we got on Sunday from the ESPN report, which shout out to you, shout out to the Wolverine. A lot of stuff that was in there is stuff that we reported a week ago and sort of took some crap, I think I would say, on it. But so great reporting on your front there, Chris. But why don't you summarize for the people what exactly came out on Sunday?
Yeah, did we take crap? I was up in the UP, man. I was in a waterfall. So I had a couple crazy unhinged texts from a couple subscribers. How dare you type of things. And I'm like, buddy, And young lady, this is what these are the facts of the case. And the fact is, the NCAA came out with guns blazing and said, "Hey, which is what they do. They did the same thing. Remember when I texted you guys that, when the meeting was going on with Tony Petiti and those guys right before the TRO, and I said, "Holy cow, this is really bad." And it was, because what the NCAA was laying out was, "This is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible." And when Michigan said, "Hey, okay, well, let's see your evidence," well, we don't really have any right now. So it wasn't nearly as bad as they made it seem, right? So now there are some eyebrow raising things in this NOA draft, which we were privy to on Monday. The 52 text messages thing, those are text messages, and it's going to come out that they had nothing to do with sign stealing. And if it were me, I can't speak, and people can make excuses and everything else. I don't think this is an excuse. If it were me and I saw that Connor Stallions was all of a sudden under the NCAA microscope, and I'm thinking this guy's a pariah now, and oh my God, I have to distance myself from him. Even if I don't have damning texts on there, I think your first inclination was like, man, I got to disassociate myself from this guy. So, and I think that's exactly how Sherrone Moore reacted. I don't think he was trying to hide anything, and I think it's pretty clear, because if it weren't clear, we would know about it already. I think that the NCAA knows what's in those text messages. I think it's a little bit of sensationalism on their part to throw things out there, and really operating in bad faith, as they really have been this whole time. If you look at Tom Maher's statement today, fellas, Jim Harbaugh's lawyer, and what they wanted them to go through to separate his personal texts from and emails from his work emails. And Tom Mars said that would have cost Jim $38,000 for me just to do that. He said I was not going to ask him to do that, and that's what they're talking about when they're talking about lack of cooperation, which is ridiculous. So, but the bottom line is this: there are some things in there that are disappointing, but nothing that we really didn't know. The overreach here, and that is exactly what we said on Monday, and I want to make this perfectly clear. We did a Q&A as well. When people were taking bits and pieces of our information about what we were saying, and saying, that means the NCAA is going to hammer Michigan. We said exactly the opposite. We said Michigan doesn't expect that to happen. We don't expect that to happen. This is just the NCAA talking. People take bits and pieces of that and put it on their blogs, I guess, because I don't read that crap, and I don't read what our competitors say. But the bottom line is, everything that ESPN said is what we said on Monday. The Denard Robinson thing is disappointing. Looks like he could get a show cause out of this, and that sucks. Obviously, Denard is a legend here. But all in all, if this is any more than, I wouldn't call it a slap on the wrist, fellas, if Sherrone got like a 2-game suspension or something like that. I don't think he deserves it. I can't speak to what you guys think, but it would be ridiculous. Michigan needs to fight this. They are fighting this. And I understand the consternation from people who would say, hey, you know what? I don't trust Michigan because of what happened with the TRO, but because of what happened in the past and their dealings with the NCAA. I understand that. But this time around, I think you're going to see it come to a conclusion that Michigan fans will be happy with. Put this chapter of Michigan football behind them. And as we said, fellas, no vacated wins. Nobody's been talking about vacated wins. This whole wet dream of the rival fan bases is just going up in smoke, and they're going to be waking up pretty soon.
Yeah, and if there was something damning in those texts, then he would have been hit with a level 1 violation, not a level 2 for not cooperating, even though he turned over the texts after they were recovered. Like you said, it seems like a gut reaction to me. I've done it before where, something happens, or whatever, and, things get complicated, and it's like, I'm just deleting this text. Screw this guy. I'm never talking to this guy again. So it's a thing that happens. Obviously, it's unfortunate because it looks like he didn't cooperate, but really the story there is that he ended up cooperating.
Immediately.
What are the contents of the text? Why isn't that something that's being charged? Because they're likely innocuous, and like you said, hopefully that comes out. Here are my thoughts of this whole thing. A couple points is, one, this isn't much to do about nothing. This is much to do about the very little that the NCAA has on Michigan beyond what Connor Stallions may or may not have done. The NCAA is unethical for leaking a draft, not a final notice of allegations, a draft that is going to be changed, potentially has been changed, and will, that has things in there that won't be on the final notice. Why do they want to do this? To get a quick PR win with the timing of the Connor Stallions documentary coming out at the end of the month, where a lot of rival fans and people around college football and sports are going to remember just what's in this and not what comes of this 2-3 years from now when the entire issue is resolved. It's a PR win. It's trying to get a quick W, and that the NCAA felt the need to do this and leaked it isn't just unethical, but it actually should inspire confidence in Michigan fans that, believe what they believe. Maybe there was some wrongdoing, maybe some minor scouting rule was broken, but as a fire alarm goes off here, smoke alarm.
Is that yours?
I think I am good. And so, yeah, I
Got
mean,
a quiche in the oven.
Confidence from Michigan fans. It should strike fear in the haters of Michigan as well. The Ohio State fans, that all they have is this hope that somehow something's going to happen. Jim Harbaugh also comes out in there that he's not connected to the case. Tom Mars, his attorney, as you mentioned, Chris, released that after Jim Harbaugh was no longer an employee of the University of Michigan, he failed to turn over 7,000 email documents that had nothing to do with the University of Michigan football program, personal stuff. And the last thing is that Sherrone Moore, again, this point that we have to keep hammering home, did produce the text messages. He did produce the text messages. He did cooperate after one initial mistake. I'm sure he would probably say it was a mistake, but he did cooperate.
Yeah, and the fact is, they're lumping all this other crap like a meal for a student athlete, $100 or something like that, and into this thing to make it look even, to make it look worse. Things that happen every day on every campus in the country. It was interesting because I saw the trailer for the Connor Stallions documentary too, and they asked me to be in that. I didn't think it was in our best interest, honestly. I think they got Dan Wetzel instead, and I think he's going to be fantastic. I think some of what he says is better than some of the stuff I could have said, frankly, because he did some digging, did some FOIA investigations about other schools that and maybe what they would have done when it came to sign stealing. And you see in that trailer Connor Stallions saying, if I'm guilty of something, then every school around the country is guilty of something or something to that effect. So it'll be interesting to see what he has to say. But more than anything, guys, this is one of those things where you just want to put it behind you, and you're hopeful that what we're hearing this time around, and again, I spoke with somebody directly involved last Monday, they said, okay, this is the bluster. We got to get past this part. This is the first step. This is a negotiation, basically, and you're going to see some of this stuff leaked in the media, which we, of course, it's Pete Thamel, and of course it's ESPN because that's what they do. And we told people this is what to expect. We didn't put names out there. We didn't say Sherrone Moore. We didn't say Denard Robinson. You know what? Because frankly, I thought it was a way over the top. Especially when we heard that these 52 text messages that were deleted had nothing to do with sign stealing, then what the hell is the big deal? I delete messages all the time from everybody. Now the timing was certainly interesting, and again, it might have been a panic move on Sherrone Moore's part. But I will say this about Sherrone Moore: there's not a person I know in this business, whether it's a rival coach or anybody that knows him, going back to his days at Oklahoma, his days as a player, that think he's anything but a first-class ethical person. I have no doubt that Sherrone Moore is above board when it comes to this stuff. And hopefully, as somebody texted me yesterday, they think these texts will be released very soon, and he'll be exonerated for this because he doesn't need his name dragged through the mud.
And Michigan would have known about this part when they hired him.
You would think, right? I would hope. But there are some things, that.
Well, to be fair, they've had some problems with vetting
yes.
some other stuff over the past,
Thank you, Anthony.
years.
Go ahead. Talk about that, Anthony.
No, I mean, here's the thing: is that it's pretty clear what the NCAA is doing again, and I've maintained from the start, and both of you guys can vouch for me on this, vouch for all of us. If there is any sort of evidence that rules were broken, if you can point us in that direction, hand out the punishment. A lot of what we're seeing now is, they want to go after the quote unquote non-compliance, which based on conversations I've had, they will determine non-compliance as you not handing the NCAA directly your phone and wanting to go through a third party to have your phone imaged that way. The NCAA is not a court of law. The NCAA is not local police. The NCAA is not FBI. You are not, now given they're the judge, jury, and executioner of their own organization, so they can make their own rules up, but, they got what they wanted out of this. But what they want to do is they want to hit Michigan with these several tiny instances of non-compliance or these small frivolous violations of, the level 3, level 2 type of stuff. Because then they get to put it all in this big pot and say, it's a lack of institutional control, or it's a culture of noncompliance and nonconformity and operating in bad faith and all of these things. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to really freak out about what happened yesterday. And it's important to remember this too. And I tweeted this out on Sunday because here's what I did. I saw news like this, reacted a little bit to it on the message board, and I touched grass and went about my day. And there's not a whole lot of that right now when it comes to the social media aspect of all of this, with rival fans wanting their pound of flesh and all of those types of things. What bothers me the most of it, and maybe this is just like the CMU alum part of it, how is no one going after Jim McElwain right now for head coach? We talk so much about head coach responsibility, and you're responsible for what happens in your program. It's pretty clear, like the NCAA, don't insult our intelligence. The NCAA knows Connor Stallions was at Michigan State. They know he was in a disguise. They know someone on Jim McElwain's coaching staff got him there. How is he not caught up in any of this? Because I'll tell you what, as a CMU alum and probably one of the 12 Central Michigan football fans that exist out there, he's done a hell of a lot less winning relative to his level of the sport than what's happened at Michigan. So a lot of this just feels like it is so extremely targeted at, a guy that, as it pertains to Jim Harbaugh, a guy that they've wanted to chase out of the college ranks for years. I'll go to my grave saying they succeeded in that, which is one of the greatest, the biggest bummers, I think, maybe in Michigan history from that regard. That guy should retire at Michigan, whether he wanted to go back to the NFL or not.
Yep.
So for me, I think a lot of the frustration, most of my frustration that comes out of Sunday, and maybe it's not even frustration, maybe it's just clarity. Like, regardless of how you feel about this entire situation, a lot of what's gone on, I wonder, if not for the CMU thing, how much heat would there be off of this in general? Because then, and it goes back to, again, I don't know Connor Stallions, like, personally, like, I've had some run-ins with him and all that. And this documentary that comes out in a few weeks is going to paint him as a borderline folk hero, certainly not the villain. It will be pro Connor Stallions. Let's make no mistake about it. Regardless of everything else that's out there, he is no hero. He is no folk hero, but he's certainly not a villain either. And I just get so frustrated about, why would you put Michigan's reputation on the line to help out Central Michigan football, who is collecting a check to get its ass beat, by a team that wasn't very good. But I feel so much of this could have been avoided by just being smarter. And that's not a Michigan thing. And that's why I think so much, and this sounds like incoherent rambling, so much of this case comes down to what I see as the recklessness and I think quite frankly, the hubris of the person who's at the center of all of it. And that's just kind of where I'll leave it, I guess.
Yeah, and we will end it there because as somebody said, they want some camp until they want us to talk some football. I will respond to Dave's here. Speculating on penalties is the part I wonder about in the original report. We weren't speculating on anything. We were telling you exactly what people were telling us that the NCAA was saying, that, hey, these are things that we are thinking about pursuing, at least initially. Maybe it was a starting point when it comes to a negotiation, which is what this is part of. And that's exactly what we said. This is not the first draft. This is not going to be the last draft, right? What goes in the NOA itself, the notice of allegations itself, will not have the details that we were privy to in this NOA draft. But I can promise you, it's not like we are speculating. We're not saying, oh no, they could get, and this is not something that the NCAA even does anymore for the most part. They say they don't want to punish people. But when you lump in Sherrone Moore, for example, and say maybe he's a repeat offender, and then you put in there these words like institutional failure, you when you're stopping just short of lack of institutional control is what they were starting to, trying to scare people with. As a starting point in their NOA draft that Michigan was privy to a week before Friday. And then they start bringing up postseason bans and they start bringing up scholarship reductions and things like that. The one thing they did not bring up, and we made this perfectly clear as well, Dave, and this is not speculation either, they did not talk about vacating wins. They did not talk about eliminating any championships or anything like that. So all those people, all those Michigan State and Ohio State fans that were just praying that these would be erased or there would be a big asterisk by it, are singing a different tune today and are going to be crying about this. So, but let's talk some football, fellas. I want to know what you guys picked up here in the last couple of days when I was on vacation. It sounds to me like the offensive line is looking pretty good. Clay?
Yeah, it seems like they have confidence in it. Kirk Campbell before camp talked about that, and really the whole offense, how many guys they have that have started a game. I tallied it up. It's 10 guys over 109 starts total, in the offense. And a lot of that comes on the offensive line with Miles Hinton at left tackle and Josh Preeb at left guard from Northwestern. And Miles Hinton said Preeb is a guy who's really kind of taken on that leadership role, even though he's a first-year player. Nobody yet has emerged as the Zach Zinter or Trevor Keegan type of personality. I like having guys like that on the O-line that can really lead the charge. But Hinton said that, they're pretty cohesive together. And he said the talent's there, the skill level's there. We just need to come together and mesh together as a unit. And I think it eases some concerns with that talk. Of course, they have to prove it on the field. But they don't have all that much time to come together. And even when you did have Zach Zinter and Trevor Keegan last year and Carson Barnhart, and I know there were moving pieces with the tackle rotation at the beginning of last season, it took them some time to find their groove. And really, they didn't totally hit their stride and become an elite line until the CFP. But every year is different. And, it seems like if Hinton can pan out, if the right tackle can play well, I mean, you should have confidence in the rest of these guys to be pretty good. They just got to, again, mesh together as a line early on because you got some big boys coming in September.
Yeah, something I like a lot about what this offensive line has up against them is that we've talked about this. It's a unique situation where you don't normally flip all 5 guys from an offensive line, but then the guys that are backfilling them are seniors or graduates or grad transfers.
Or juniors that are 24 years old.
Yeah, exactly. So, the biggest key for that, like, I have no doubts that this line is going to come together and it'll look pretty good by the time the regular season comes around because Greg Crippen gets to have a one-on-one with Mason Graham every single day. And some of those guards will go up against Kenneth Grant, and those tackles are handling those edge rushers. To me, one of the things that Kirk Campbell talked about with us last week was, trying to find, they think they probably have 6 to 7 guys, but trying to find that 8th guy, that 9th guy that kind of rounds things out to where not only do you have an extra guy or two you can bring out as a blocker in certain formations, but if there's an injury, that there's not that significant of a drop off there. So, certainly when you look at the guys past that starting 5, I think there's been some good buzz about Evan Link heading into fall camp, and we'll see what things look like over the next few weeks. But, some of the other guys talked about Raheem Anderson. We've talked about Jeff Percy, who's been in the mix for that right tackle job. Really interested in seeing what guys like Nathan Afobe do, heading into their second year. I have high hopes for both Blake Frazier and Andrew Sprague. So, can they get to 10? I don't know. I think that I think they have 7. I think they can get to 8. I think 8, just based on the conversations we've heard or that we've had with some of these coaches, I think that's kind of the magic number for them. And it does feel like they have the pieces to get there.
Yep. And I think I fixed my audio, guys. Does that sound better?
Right on.
Sorry about that. Yep. I forgot to push a button. So go figure, old guys in technology. So
it sounded like you were underwater.
That's, what? And usually I am.
Well, he's in the submarine.
Absolutely. So I love this. I love Yellow Shirt Guy. He's a skiing fan, obviously. Every year the oil is different, but the chicken sandwich is still the same. Yep, time to deliver some. Exactly. As Doug Skeen said, and my podcast partner, I just talked to him today, by the way. We're going to have a special guest on the show, a Michigan football player next week. You guys are going to tune into that. I don't want to say who, so somebody can beat us to the punch. But every year the oil is different, but the chicken sandwiches still stay the same. Doug Skeen always used to say, in the fourth quarter, you could tell that the guys that we were beating up when we were on the offensive line were just waiting to get their chicken sandwich and get on the bus, their Snickers bar, and just fantastic. Some great stories that he had about making guys cry. And the last 3 years, guys, those lines have made some people cry. We saw a lot of Washington players limping off the field last year, defensively and offensively. And I think you're going to see more of the same as long as Sherrone Moore is there. He demands that these guys be physical. So heard great things about them. And as Miles Hinton said, he is absolutely right. The talent is there. I saw it in the spring game. You know how everybody got on Brady Hoke for saying he couldn't hear football. He couldn't hear it. The pads popping. That was not an issue, guys, when we were in the press box in the spring game. There was some major hitting going on out there. There is still a lot of talent out there. This is going to be a fun football team to watch if they get the quarterback play that we hope they get. And we'll talk about that, obviously, in a minute. I got some pretty good intel on that.
I really liked one thing Miles Hinton said, too, when it comes to Sherrone Moore being involved still with the offensive line is it was one instance, but he said, somebody asked, like, what's the best tip, Sherrone Moore has given you? And he said, he thought for a second. He's like, well, yesterday in the offensive line meeting, he told me, like, that's what it's supposed to look like, on this one pass set or whatever it was. And, just the fact that Sherrone Moore is in there involved, I know it's one instance, but you kind of read between the lines that he's going to continue to do that. And obviously Grant Newsome's in charge of the offensive line now. Sherrone Moore has a ton of confidence in him, and so do the players. But Sherrone Moore helping out there, like Jim Harbaugh did with the quarterbacks, wanting to sit in on those meetings as much as possible, is definitely going to be beneficial for that group.
Yeah, and I like what they're saying over here. I like reading the comments as they're going on. Juju, you guys think Wink is tired of hearing the Don Brown camp already? A comparison? Absolutely, I do. And as Borge Warner said, he said the best way to stop being compared to Don Brown is to not be anything like him. And he's absolutely right. And you know what? It doesn't mean that he can't be himself and be somewhat aggressive, but you don't need to put your guys on an island all the time. And we found out the last couple of years that some of the best ways to beat Ohio State, for example, is to make these guys think and to throw different looks at them so that they don't know where they're going with the ball. They don't know where defenders are coming from. Feign that you're sending the house and then drop guys back into coverage works a hell of a lot, just as well as blitzing all the time. And in fact, a lot of the times it works better. So, and as Juju says, his scheme is completely different than Don Brown's. And I think he's absolutely right. Just because you're aggressive doesn't mean you're Don Brown. And I do want to say that Don Brown did some good things here at times as well. People figured him out. And we want to talk about stealing signals. I think that some would argue that he made it easy for them to steal signals, but that's how they were figuring him out too. Zone man, you put a tight end in motion, somebody said, and you could figure out what they were doing on defense and how to combat it. So, but Dave, you're right. I'm old enough to remember Don Brown with the number 1D. That's correct. But when people figured it out, he didn't adjust, and that was his issue. I don't think there will be any problem with that with Don Brown.
Well, let's put some respect on Don Brown's name too. Like 2016, 2017, Ohio State. Everyone remembers what happened 2018, 2019, which ultimately, like when that happens, that's your legacy. Similar to how when you get your ass beat 3 years in a row, that's your legacy. Like you got to wear that. So he coached some really good football here, but I just that comparison, and I feel like we've talked about this a lot over the last several months. Like it's just not accurate. It's not a good faith comparison. It's not even. There's no one can come up with a football argument for why Wink Martindale is the next Don Brown other than, he likes to blitz a lot. It's like, dude was in the NFL for 20 years. You can't just solve your problems with aggression in the NFL. You got to draw some things up a little differently. So
that's profiling to compare them, as Wink said. So, and they both have the same first names. They're both old. Those are the only two similarities.
And he's a good guy, man. And we interviewed him. I interviewed him for about 20 minutes before the season. I had a great down-to-earth conversation with him. I really like him. I really think, this guy's been around a long time. He is not going to be so stubborn that, he's going to lose games because he's not going to change who he is. And that's just not who he is. And that's why NFL teams were still coming after him when he left the Giants. But he told me flat out, he said, you know what? I hate Sherrone Moore had me at hello, pretty much. He said about 15 minutes into the conversation, I knew I wanted that job. I told my wife that. He said, little did I know that Sherrone had made up his mind and that he wanted me. The second he went up there, it was fantastic. And he said it really clicked. So like this guy, think he's going to do extremely well. I think that defense, guys, is going to be the best in the country. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And they're going to win a lot of football games for them. Don't sleep on the offense, though, guys. I'm telling you, there's still a lot of talent over there.
Well, let's talk about the offense really quick. Some folks asking about the QB battle. Chris, you said you have a little bit of intel coming in the coming days, but is there anything be willing to divulge for the masses here this evening?
Yeah, I said, I was talking to an insider close to the team, and I said, all right, so who's your quarterback? And he said, that's a great question. He said, they don't know yet. And he said, that is not BS. This is not a Joe Milton type situation where they had basically singular focus on one guy and said, we are going to ride or die with this guy, whether or not he deserves it, frankly. And to me, that was, I'm not going to call it, I thought it was irresponsible, right? Because you're so singularly focused on one guy and his physique and how far he throws the ball. And you've got other guys like a Cade McNamara behind him that were competing for the job and maybe playing better. But you were so intent on developing this guy to reach his alleged high ceiling that you didn't look at what else you had. So it only stands to reason that you should be looking at guys like Jack Tuttle, and you should be looking at guys like Davis Warren to see what they can do as well, hoping, like we all do, at least I know I am, that Alex Orji becomes the next Cam Newton and becomes an absolute stud. Could you even imagine? I've seen guys tear Michigan up as dual threats of this size. Remember Donovan McNabb way back in the day, tearing him up with his arm and his legs. So we've seen that way too often. I would love to see Michigan have somebody like that as well. So in that respect, I admit it. I am rooting for Alex Orji to win the job and to be that guy, because I think what an unbelievable specimen he is. Do I think it is going to happen? I don't know. That's why, but people said, everybody that we've talked to, and you guys were there when we were talking to players, when we were talking to parents who had been watching 7-on-7s, said that Jack Tuttle, for example, was by far and away the better passer. And so that is kind of where we are right now. And then I had one guy tell me Davis Warren has, the NFL arm. He was throwing the ball farther than JJ McCarthy can make all the throws. Actually threw it better when he had to layer the football. The problem is, according to one that we spoke with who sees practice every day, is that Davis didn't really trust himself. It was either a check down or an interception on every other drive. And obviously that's not going to work. So this camp's going to tell us a lot, but early on in the early going, it is still wide open. Nobody has separated themselves, but this is a competition. This is not going to be, unfortunately for those who want it, Alex Orji's job and everybody else chasing him like it was with Joe Milton.
Clayton, any thoughts on QBs? I mean, not a whole lot has changed other than I know they've had a couple padded practices, and this feels maybe not separation week, but this feels like this being the first full week of fall camp, to me feels like really where you kind of set your feet and hit the ground running.
Yeah, well, I mean, first, I don't know if you never reach a ceiling, was that the accurate ceiling? I mean, people try to put this, what if Jack Tuttle's the next Tom Brady, if Alex Orji is going to be the next Cam Newton?
That's fair too.
Yeah, it's like Joe Milton, they're going through the same thing. The Patriots reporters are saying, is he going to beat out Drake May for the job? And, I know Andy Staples did a segment on this a few days ago on his show on 3, where it's like, no, we've seen this movie 2 times. We saw it at Michigan and we saw it at Tennessee. Like, oh, he's got the big arm, and, obviously a bunch of clips have gone viral of him at Patriots training camp. It's not really that relevant. What is his upside if he's never going to reach it? Again, potential is kind of this thing that you can never really prove or whatever. But and I'm not saying Alex Orji doesn't have a high ceiling or can't be a really good quarterback, but I just don't see that as being the way to go. Now, he has had the summer, to come in and prepare and get ready for this. And if he seizes his opportunity, I absolutely think he could be a good option. I think the same for Jack Tuttle. I think the same for Davis Warren. And, the athleticism there is really intriguing, and he will play a role no matter what, which is, I think, encouraging, because I liked some of the stuff they did with him last year in a very limited role. Like, he would come in for 2 plays at a time. But I liked those plays. He was very poised. He was under control. There weren't anything pre-snap that, where he was totally, out of his league or anything when he came in against Ohio State or Alabama or Washington. So I think, there's a lot to like about Alex Orji and the rest of the guys too, if they can prove themselves this camp.
I'll start with the Joe Milton stuff. There was a meme, or at least a picture, that went around the internet of this old record player with a sticker on, or a piece of paper on it that says, Megan's going to pull it up. It says, does not work, but could be fun to fix. That is Joe Milton. That has been Joe Milton since he was a high school football player. That was Joe Milton at Michigan. That was Joe Milton at Tennessee. and that will be Joe Milton with the New England Patriots. Everyone thinks that it's like the women fall in love with the bad boys because, I can change him. I'll be the one that changes him.
Yep.
The guy can rip a pigskin a quarter mile, but again, good luck with that.
Throw it over a mountain.
And don't forget too, I mean, that being the weird 2020 COVID season, Joe Milton kind of won that job by default because Dylan McCaffrey just disappeared. I don't know where he went, just disappeared.
Left in Wisconsin after that dirty hit. Left in that wasn't Wisconsin after that dirty hit. I do want to comment on something that Moose said up here. If Tuttle is the bar, we're in some serious trouble this year. We have no idea if that's true. Brian Griese wasn't Brian Griese until his 5th year at Michigan, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, this sucks! Can't believe Brian Griese's our guy." He had the one game against the 1 half against Ohio State. Other than that, he had been completely inconsistent. And even in the Iowa game that year, he had 3 picks where Lloyd Carr had to say, "Okay, at halftime, you got us into this shit, get us out of it," and he did. And he came back and he became a good quarterback. And there's no, maybe Joe Milton, maybe the light goes on for him in a year or two. And
don't do this. Don't do this.
Hey, it's fun to try to fix them, right? But regardless, and Warren is much better than Tuttle. Moose, you have no idea. Oh, he was clearly the best quarterback in the spring game. He threw a pass for 50 yards, as one player told us, over our 5th string defensive back, some little kid who's going to be, working in pharmaceutical sales here in about 3 or 4 years, with all due respect to the kid, whoever got beat on that play by Kendrick Bell. Right. And another one that turned into a long run. Just because you play well in a spring game doesn't mean shit. I've seen great quarterback play from bad quarterbacks in spring games. What was it? 6-9 passes or something like that. And he threw some good balls and I was happy for him. But as of right now, everything we've heard is that Jack Tuttle, played extremely well and threw the ball extremely well this summer. And as you guys were there and would attest to, we've had people tell us that they strongly believe that Tuttle is going to have a great chance to win this job. I am not ready to concede that he can't be a solid quarterback here. Jake Rudock was an Iowa cast-off, and he threw for 3,000 yards here. So let's just see what happens before we draw conclusions is all what I'm saying.
If we want to play the small sample size game, we can say that the fact that Davis Warren was 0 for 5 with an interception last year in games, real games that counted.
Right.
I'm not at all saying that is representative of the type of player he is.
No.
But if you want to go down that road, I think it was Josh Nichols was the DB that got beat. Somebody who's not going to see significant time at all this year in the spring. He was the guy in the spring game. So I could be wrong on that. But, it doesn't seem to make that much sense. I don't think that Jack Tuttle is necessarily going to be Brian Griese or Jake Rudock. I mean, Jake Rudock was beat off by somebody who, and CJ Beathard. I know it's Iowa, but back then they actually did have, a few good quarterbacks. And Beathard was, I think, like a 3rd round pick in the NFL and started some games for the 49ers. So, there is a higher bar there, I guess. But at the same time, when you don't want to be in college football for 7 years because it means you didn't have a chance to go to the NFL before. But there has to be something to being in college football for 7 years and being a guy who is going to coach at some point and having an understanding of the offense now over a year in and just an understanding of a lot of different offenses 7 years in. So there's got to be something to that. And I think that's why he's got a fighter's chance here.
Somebody did make a good point. Tuttle needs to last the whole season. The guy stays injured. And he has been injured for a lot of his career as well. So that's a good point there. So
he's got to take care of the ball too.
Yeah, 100%. So somebody also, Juju says Michigan's offense isn't QB dependent. We turned JJ into a game manager. A little bit of that is true. Yep. But all this talk about, hey, short passes and, what we're gonna just pass short and put them in positions where they don't have to make mistakes and just run the ball. You know what? Defenses are going to be prepared for that. And it sounds good, but at some point you have to have a quarterback that can make throws downfield to open up your offense. Otherwise, they're going to be crowding the line of scrimmage, and you're not going to go anywhere. We saw teams crowding the line of scrimmage against the running game last year. JJ McCarthy, for example, picked Michigan State apart when they tried to do that. And in different games, he was able to do that. If you don't have a quarterback that can do that, then you're going to be punting the ball quite a bit. So this could be a trestle ball type year, fellas, and where, you play it a little bit closer to the vest. You don't turn the ball over. You play to your defense and you play to your strengths, which I still think will be the running game. I think with that offensive line, and with the running backs they have. And I like Kurt Campbell. I really do. I like everything I've heard about him from people inside the program, about his ability to call an offense and to keep people off balance. This isn't going to be Lloyd ball, right, where you hand it off three times in a row and hope to get a first down. It's not going to be like that. I think Kurt Campbell has a little bit more in his bag. So, but to me, it's going to come down to protecting the ball, right? It's not going to be sexy, but the defense sure as hell will be. And there's nothing sexier, guys, nothing sexier than a defensive line that manhandles people and controls games like we had last year. This one could be even better than last year's. Guys, I'm getting excited just thinking about it.
Let me throw a stat out there and why last year's stats, last year's film it's not linear. It doesn't carry over year to year. There is a starting quarterback of the Michigan Wolverines from the last 10 years that won 10 games, threw for 2,500 yards, 18 touchdowns, 7 picks. Year before, 9-25. That's 36% of his passes completed. 73 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. It's Wilton Spate. Guy won a lot of football games for you. It doesn't matter what happened the year before. And I know it's not.
He was clutch the year before, but yeah.
He was clutch. He came in and won that game in Minnesota, if I remember correctly, right?
Yep.
So it's one of those things where we're not fueling the hype train on a specific guy. We're telling you why it could work or what they see in one guy.
Yeah.
It could be fun if it works for Alex Orji. If Davis Warren is, if he cuts it loose and he's a student of throwing the football and every day at practice looks like the 15 snaps of football that you got to see on a Saturday in April, then by golly, Michigan might have its starting quarterback. But the unknown is scary, and sometimes that can be a good thing because you have a loaded quarterback room. Sometimes it could be scary because you don't know what the hell you have, and I don't think they know what they have, and they're just going to have to kind of deal with it. And if Sherrone Moore and if Kurt Campbell are as good as we think they are, they're going to call some good offense and put these guys in position to succeed. So, from an infrastructure standpoint, I have confidence that they will pick the right guy, whoever it winds up being. And if it's not Alex Orji, he's going to have a role. If it is, I think that's probably if it is Alex Orji and he hits his ceiling, whatever that may be, it's undefined, right? But if he can just be an adequate passer, I think that makes Michigan its most, the most difficult it can possibly be to defend, because you're going to add some of that, the RPOs, the QB runs, and all that to your offense. So we'll see. That's a whole lot, a long little spiel signifying really nothing. We'll see what happens over the next several weeks. What do you think about moving to questions?
Yeah, let's do that. But real quick, I want to say, to me, the interesting part is going to be what happens if Alex Orji struggles a little bit in the first game, and everybody makes those comparisons to Milroe improving as the year went on, right? Do you stick with him for game 2 against Texas? Do you make a move? Do you see what he does in the first part of the Texas game? Do you give Tuttle or Warren snaps? If Orji wins the job, do you give them snaps anyway in the first game if Orji's struggling? That's what I don't know, and that's why I'm fascinated to see. So, but guys, we're starting to, now that it's August, we're getting a little tingly here thinking about the first game, and then that Texas game and what's going on, starting to get the football feel here. And these questions are all going to be answered, but we aren't going to know. Somebody asked, when are we going to know the starting quarterback? Is it going to be a week before the game? The first game, it might be the night before. And I really believe that we won't know who the starting quarterback is for sure until probably week 2 or week 3.
And I think you have to stick with whatever your plan is for game 1, regardless of struggles. Like, I think you have to stick with it, whether that's Jack Tuttle's struggling or Davis Warren struggling. If they're the starter, same thing, doesn't matter per guy. I just wanted to go back to the comment about the offense not being quarterback dependent. It's not really, if you just look at it on the surface, but when you look at Michigan last year reaching and winning the national championship, 3rd and 6 or longer, 43 for 59, 6 touchdowns, 625 yards, no interceptions. Those were gotta have it downs that J.J. McCarthy was so good at. If you're going to win 12 games in the regular season or 11 or 10 and make the college football playoff, you're probably going to have to convert on a lot of those plays. So whoever it is going to have to do that. unless you sneak in at 9-3 or something like that with the playoff, and then make a run and be at your best at the end of the year. But it's going to be kind of interesting to see if they can convert those, and we'll know, like you said, early on in the season what they have.
Yeah, and somebody, Ballas, you've been saying Tuttle for a while. I'll believe it when I see it. No, I haven't. I've been saying that he has a legitimate chance. Listen, I have been saying he has a legitimate shot, that this is a wide open competition, that there are people who think that Tuttle will be the guy when it's all said and done, based largely on Alex Orji going, not having developed to the point that you'd love to see. And it's going to be hard for him. This guy they were going to move him to kick returner last year, right? They didn't let him throw a single freaking pass last year. I mean, not one. And that
he should have thrown the one away against Alabama.
Yes, and that should be pretty telling to you how far he had to go. So, regardless, it's going to be it's an open competition. There are people who think Tuttle will eventually be the guy. I'm with you, man. If I will believe it when I see it, and I'm hopeful. All I'm hopeful for is that they have one consistent guy that isn't going to hold this team back, because that is the one position that there's a big question mark. You can talk about receivers. Well, they don't have receivers. I tell you what, Tyler Morris is a damn good football player, flat out. Colston Lovell, and they're going to split him out at times like a big receiver. And they said that he's been unstoppable at times, when in that role. So they've got running backs. They've got an offensive line that's going to be really, really good. It's going to come down to that position. This is not Iowa, as everybody was saying. Well, they're going to be like Iowa because their offense is going to suck. No, it's not. But it can be really good if the quarterback position is good. And that's what we are all hoping for, whoever it is. I did not say Jack Tuttle is going to be the guy.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end that segment. Questions now, Clayton, as you are so often the arbiter of the queries that we receive each week on this show. So what do you got for us?
What'd you just say?
What'd you just
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't understand all these big words that are being thrown around here.
All right. Well, pick a question out.
It's all good, Moose. I'm just busting your chops. I know, Moose. I just want to make it clear. So Juju did make a good point here. Lovin was 7 for 7 over 200 yards when split out too. So Juju, you're becoming a very good contributor to this podcast.
Is that a fact? Do we know that?
Is that a fact? I don't know. Unless that's a good point. He could have just thrown that.
It's the internet.
It is the internet, exactly. Yeah, and aliens might be invading us right now or something. So, all right, let's go Q&A, fellas. I'm sorry.
We'll look into it. Let's see.
I'll start with one on YouTube. This one's from the Lost and Unfounds. How do you guys think Kalel Mullings will do?
I think he's going to be a stud. And we've heard that, what Sherrone Moore said at Media Day. He said, people aren't talking enough about him. Look at this guy. His body's never been in better shape, which I love to hear. When you lose Ben Herbert and these guys are still doing the same things and their bodies look incredible like they do, I think Mullings is really a good back. And I think we're going to see more of him. A lot of it's going to depend on how Donovan Edwards does early on in games. But I think Kalel Mullings is one of those guys who can be in the mold of a faster BJ Askew back in the day. It's probably again before your time, fellas, but a bigger back who can do some things, but he's got good feet. He's got better speed than people think. And some of the runs I went back and looked at against Nebraska and a couple others where he found holes that was really impressive. His vision was really good. So I think he's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, I think he's got more lightning than people give him credit for, and maybe Donovan Edwards this year is trying to prove he has a little more thunder than people are giving him credit for. But yeah, I think he's going to be good too. I think there's a chance at some point this year he's the guy that has to carry the load in a game. If he's got it going, I mean, I think he'll get that opportunity. If it's Donovan Edwards, he will. If it's someone else, they will. But yeah, I think he's going to have a good year. He's a beast, man. He's a beast, and really, what a transformation too for Kalel Mullings. There was a point, when he was a freshman, sophomore. Didn't seem like he was maybe physical enough as a linebacker. There were rumors at one point that his dad put to bed that, he was going to transfer. And now here he is. It's one of the, biggest, baddest guys on the team that's going to play a key role. So I'm excited for him.
Me too.
Yeah, I've been talking him up all off season. As good as we think Donovan Edwards can be with the ball in his hands more, I think the world of Kalel Mullings. He's a guy that if Blake Corum wasn't on your roster, as we've said, he'd have a much bigger role. So excited to see what he brings to the table. I really do think this is going to be a 1A and 1B type of situation. So what do we got next?
rank these players from Hart 20 on the fort. Blake Corum, J.J. McCarthy, Mikey Sainristil, Aiden Hutchinson, and Jabril Peppers. Incredible.
Wow. Yeah.
I have to go with Blake as my one. I'd probably go with Aiden 2, McCarthy 3, Sainristil 4, and Peppers 5, just because he didn't win at the level. But as people point out, I believe it's our guy Dan Gold's on the fort. If Michigan gets the correct spot at Ohio State and they go on to win the national championship, all the guys on that 16 team are going to be revered forever as well. It's just, the literally an inch or whatever it was could determine how you look at these guys in the future.
Yeah, and you know what? Jabril had a chance to make a play in that 16 game.
Yeah,
and he did not. And unfortunately, that's the memory of him, right? All these great players. I go back to kickers, even Mike Gillette. His legacy. He was a great kicker at Michigan, and he once told me, he said they had a fan vote for who is the best Michigan kicker of all time. And I think this was in the early 2000s. And he said, I'm going to be devastated if I don't win that. And I said, prepare yourself, because Remy Hamilton made the kick at Notre Dame and you missed yours by this much. And that's all it takes. Mike Lantry was a good kicker at Michigan in the 70s. And what he said on the Big Ten Network is, my legacy is the kicks that I missed against Ohio State, even though one of them was good. And even Joe Paterno said so. And then on top of that, that's, I would go Aiden number one. I think that his impact on games, and that especially that Ohio State game that really changed the rivalry and changed the course of Michigan football, the direction, it makes him number one to me. I'm going with J.J. McCarthy is number two, just because the guy flat out freaking won, right? How many games did he lose as Michigan starting quarterback? It was unbelievable. Yeah, Blake Corum number three. Who was the other one? Mikey. God bless it. Yep. I would tie Mikey and Blake at number three. Hell, I would tie all those guys at number two, right behind Aiden Hutchinson. Those guys are all Michigan legends. I know it's a cop out, but damn, that is one good list.
It is.
Yeah, it's almost like the four recent guys, and then it's Peppers. Like for me, it's JJ McCarthy, Aiden Hutchinson, Blake Corum, Mike Sainristil. I just, Michigan for almost 10 years under Jim Harbaugh, you're waiting for that quarterback that would push you forward into college football playoff success. And he made a lot of things look easy that I think the fan base is going to realize when, whatever shape this takes this year. I mean, he was just automatic in some of those situations and exactly what they needed as they retrofitted his skill set into what they wanted to be. Tim Cornet for $5 says, keep up the great work, guys. Don't let the outside noise bother you. Go blue. It never does. I close my laptop. I touch grass.
You know what? There must have been one hell of that stuff that I didn't know about, because frankly, Tim, I don't give a shit. And I wrote this on Saturday, man. You got guys writing stuff they're making up out of their ass, that we knew for a fact. What we heard on Monday was absolutely true, and what they said. And you've got this segment. There's one weird segment of guys, and I wrote this on this beat. There are great people, the Angelique Shingelises, the Bob Winowski's, the M-Life guys, except for Zook. I'm just kidding, Zook. I love you, man.
We know he's watching too.
Yeah, exactly. And some really, really good people. And then there are just like 3 or 4 guys whose self-worth depends on ripping people, I guess. I don't know, but it has never bothered me, because every time they do it, it draws more attention to us. They come to the message board to see what it's all about, and they understand that, frankly, we are the best in the business. And I don't give a damn, what anybody else writes. I don't pay attention to blogs. I don't pay attention to what anybody else says that we said wrong when we know for a fact that it wasn't. We know about our sources, and we go back to Burgergate, and we go back to Signgate when we had somebody on top of every single move that was going on. So, Tim, I appreciate it, man. But that's all Twitter crap. And as Dave Chappelle said, Twitter isn't a real place anyway. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Appreciate you. And go Niners unless they're playing the Lions, as long as, Jake Moody's got a big kick. We're hoping that his boy Jake Moody.
Friend of Jake Moody's. In fact, more than that, Tim Cornet is a trusted agent of the Wolverine. And what's the other word? Known friend. Known friend and trusted agent.
Had a beer with the man.
Yes, we did.
Yes, sir. All right, let's go to you. You have another one, Clay?
No, Matt with the super chat up on the screen.
Oh, I didn't see it. Who's going to get the calls through the helmet on D? I believe that this was somewhat addressed on Sunday. I was not there, but Ernest Hausman spoke to the media. What did he have to say about that?
Well, he said they haven't decided yet, but I mean, I would imagine it's going to be him. And one of the tells was Sherrone Moore at Big Ten Media Day talking about the in-helmet communication and how he took the radio one time to mess with Ernest and yell at him through his helmet there. And really kind of sucks for those guys. They just have to take it. Like, you have your helmet on and there's just this voice in your head. We all have voices in our head sometimes, but so that was a little bit of a tell to me. I would imagine it's him. I mean, you probably want an inside linebacker doing it. Jayshon Barham just got here this year, is still trying to pick things up. They said he's really gaining a good understanding of the defense, but I would think it's Ernie, as they call him. So, seems like he's stepped up in quite a leadership role.
Yeah, he's a Wink Martindale favorite already. Those linebackers are going to be so much fun to watch. I can't wait to see both those guys on the field.
Guys, isn't there something about great defense that just it's almost better than great offense? I know there are people out there that like track meets, but when you're sucking the life out of an offense, is there anything better than that, man? Not to me.
Like Penn State last year.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucked the whole life out of the building.
They were demoralized. It was just like, and I went back and I listened to some of the Michigan State commentary in that Michigan State football game, and you hear the Jason Strayhorn saying, "Oh man, oh wow, oh no," it's just like one thing after another, and you hear that place taken over by Michigan fans because they can't do a damn thing on offense. It's just wonderful. I can't wait to see what Wink does with these guys.
It pained you to listen to that MSU broadcast, I'm sure.
I felt bad for them.
Let's take this one from Juju, and I think we talked about this recently as well. Who do you think has a bigger impact alongside TJ Guy on the 2 deep? Is it Dom Nichols, who's a freshman, Cameron Brandt, who's a sophomore, and Keyshawn Bennett, who is a guy that's been in the program for a while, but we haven't heard a ton about?
It's a great question. Juju's pretty good, man. I'm liking Juju. What's your moniker on the board, Juju? You got to tell us. I want to know who you are. You came to play. So this is a great question. Does it have to be 4? Can it be 3? I don't know. Ideally you'd like to have 4. What was it last year? It was essentially 4, right? 2 groups. You had 2 guys. You had the veterans, and then you had the young guys, Derek Moore and Josiah Stewart. So somebody's going to have to emerge. I don't know if Nichols is ready for that. I would probably go with Brandt based on just the fact that he's been around a little bit longer. That would be my opinion.
Yeah, I'd go Cam Brandt as well. But I mean, maybe it is more than 4, like it was a couple years ago when they were rotating all sorts of guys in, Abioki and Taylor Upshaw and Braden McGregor and Mike Morris and Jalen Harrell. So maybe it is deeper than 4, and I think that would benefit them to keep these guys fresh.
All right. Want to take one more or 7 o'clock? Do we want to exit stage left here?
No, I want to take a couple more. This has been fun. I want to go right here. Somebody said, but there's yellow shirt guy again. But somebody said, hold on, there was a good question here. Oh, is kicker a bigger question mark than quarterback? I don't think so. I think Dominic Zavada is going to be the real deal. And people we've seen his leg strength and speaking to people close to the program. In fact, I asked Sherrone Moore about this at Media Day. He said he's been fantastic. So feel really good about him.
Yeah, I think they answered every question there by getting him.
Yeah. And
they're going to use him against Arkansas State. Hopefully they don't have to, kick any field goals, but maybe extra points. They're going to use him to beat his old team, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Maybe we end on a high note with yellow shirt guy here. He says offensive line is enormous. Chris Hinton, 340 pounds. Josh Preeb, 310 pounds. Greg Crippen, 309. Giovanni El Hadi, 318. Gentry, 327. Are they eating Philly originals from Mr. Spots?
They aren't. And they might be, but they are not getting fat. And that's what I love about it. Having seen these guys, I saw Gentry last year when they went on their trip to Cleveland, and they went to the East Coast, and he looked fantastic. He looked even better when I saw him recently walking down the street. I think he's going to have a really good year. He wants it badly. You can tell. I think he's back into game shape now. Hinton is in good shape. He looks great. Preeb, is going to be the best lineman of all of them. So I like this line, but they're mobile too. These guys are very athletic. It's funny because Doug Skeen compared Preeb to, when he watched him on film, I specifically asked him to watch film on him, and he said he reminded him of Zach Zinter the way he played. No, he's not the next Zach Zinter, but he reminded him of him the way he played. El Hadi, I've been waiting to see a lot more of him. I think he's going to be every bit as good as Trevor Keegan, and I think that's saying something given what Trevor Keegan did at that position. So I am really excited to see where this line is in about 6 weeks into the season.
Yeah, and Giovanni El Hadi too actually dropped 8 pounds from last season, and he looks incredible as well. And Miles Hinton said that he now has his grown man strength era. He's in his grown man strength era. So these guys, that's one benefit of having, it's 5 new starters, but these are older guys that are physically mature and also, have a good knowledge of the system and football in general. That's going to pay off, I think, as long as, again, they can come together, mesh, have that chemistry, be able to set the tone in those big moments of the big games.
Absolutely. I'll end with this one from Your Average Fan. He says, you have an athletic O-line, you're shaky at quarterback, good afternoon, good after catch wide receivers is what he meant to say. Yep. Sounds like they need to throw more screens. Yeah, that was an aspect of the offense I thought we maybe would see more of last year and never really did. But certainly when you look at the guys that they have at wide receiver, Donovan Edwards is tailor-made to be more of an impact guy there. I wouldn't be surprised to see more of that this season.
Yeah, Samaj can do it. That was
Tyler Morris can do it. I think they all can do it. I think Fred Moore's got great speed. So, and they've got running backs that can catch too. We know that what Donovan Edwards can do out of the backfield. So there are athletes out here and ways to get them the ball. I think Kirk Campbell has been scheming all summer, just a hunch to figure out what he wants to do. They aren't going to put, I hate to say the cliche, all the eggs in one basket. And if this doesn't work, they have no answer for it. That was Josh Gaddis in a nutshell, right? If you don't have a plan A, then you better have a plan B and a plan C. And I think Kirk Campbell's going to do that.
Yeah, I also think he was working his job this summer. He better have been doing that.
Yeah, 100%.
And Samaj Morgan, 14 of his 22 catches last year came behind the line, and obviously he made some electric plays. So they're going to use him as, more than that, but he can do it. You get him in space, speed in space. It's proven method, so they should do that.
There we go, throwing it back. All right, that's going to do it for us, for Chris Ballas, Clayton Safey, our producer Megan behind the scenes. Remember to use that promo code UM1 to get 2 months of access to the Wolverine for only $1. That's going to get you on the message board where we take a lot of these questions from. It's going to get you Chris's intel. It's going to get you the recruiting guys' intel. It's going to get premium stuff, analysis, breakdowns from Clayton and myself and our entire crew. Best deal in America. No other way to put it. So thank you guys for watching. We will talk to you again next time here on the Wolverine.